Hey there, it's Abby just popping in before this month's recording of IT Office Hours, where we're going to discuss website security for your business. I wanted to just share some details for you so that you could make sure to get in there and register for next month's session. So next month, we're going to host IT Office Hours on Wednesday, May 20th at noon, the usual time for that. And we're going to be touching on employee cybersecurity training. So we're going to cover what type of things that you want to make sure you have in your employee cybersecurity training plan, and honestly, just where you start if you were looking to implement something like that for your business. So again, that's going to be on Wednesday, May 20th at noon, and I look forward to seeing you there. Feel free to register by clicking the button just below the video. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12 o'clock noon on the dot on Wednesday, April 22nd, meaning that it is time for IT Office Hours with Andromeda Technology Solutions. This is the first ever IT Office Hours session that we're doing remotely from home, so I do appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time to join in this afternoon. We're talking about something a little bit different than usual today. You know, our previous sessions have been very focused on applications and cybersecurity and compliance related to your business. And one of the areas that we haven't necessarily dug too deep just yet has really been cybersecurity and security as it relates to your business's website, right? So if you may or may not know, but Andromeda does offer full web design and digital marketing services to our clients. So we don't just help protect your business from a cybersecurity standpoint when it comes to IT. We're also here to help protect you and elevate your business with support for your website as well. And websites over the last few years have started to see, and like the web environment, web businesses have started to see a much stronger need out there for enhanced security and protections for business and professional websites, really any website in general, but we focus primarily on the B2B market. So we wanted to take a little bit of time, especially during the current climate with COVID-19 and a lot of people working from home. We're using the internet more than ever. We're on websites more than ever. We're searching for new clients and new businesses and new prospects, and we're doing everything that we're doing remotely online. So I figured it would be a really great time to just take a quick moment to take a look at your website, take a look at what security features are out there for you and the things that you really want to be looking at for your business to make sure that you're protecting yourself, you're protecting website visitors, and then you're also going to want to make sure that you pay attention to security elements on your website because it actually can impact your digital marketing. So we'll kind of dig into that a little bit as well. So without further ado, we'll kick this off and get it started. I've got a little bit of a unique setup today. So hopefully you guys won't experience anything different from that perspective. But for any of our newcomers, I want to just take a moment to showcase, what is IT Office Hours anyway? We kind of always take a couple seconds to dedicate to that. So for any new attendees, IT Office Hours is just a monthly webinar series that we offer to our clients and friends. Here at Andromeda, we're big believers in giving back to our community, and we believe that education is the best way to get the most out of your technology, as well as protect your business from the current threats that cybersecurity is throwing. Hackers and criminals are throwing at us every single day. So you're going to see popular topics in cybersecurity. We touch on different things related to IT at your business. We touch on compliance. We've done sessions on different software solutions like Office 365, ways that you can get more out of the tools that you're using for your business. Really, for all intents and purposes, this webinar series is really just meant to provide some free education to help you guys get more out of your technology at your business. And we typically host it on the third Wednesday of every month at the 12 o'clock on the dot, lunchtime, for about 15 minutes. So today's topic, like I already mentioned, is security and your business website or your professional website, your pro site, however we want to refer to it. And I want to just review real quick what our goal is. So our goal really here is just to make sure that you know what you need to know to protect your website, your business, and the people visiting it. Because again, a lot of times we don't think about our website, we think about it as an extension of the business from a marketing standpoint and for messaging, but we don't necessarily think about the extension it represents for our business and some of the vulnerabilities it can create and issues it can create if it's not properly secured. So there's three primary avenues I want you to think about this. And when we talk about protecting our website, number one, we don't want ever to put site visitors at risk. The last thing that you want is to have people coming to your website. You're doing all of this work to make sure that you're there and you're present, and that when people are searching for you, they can find you. The last thing that you guys are going to want to do is, encourage people to come to your website and then have, unbeknownst to you, a hacker place a malicious file or something and infect a visitor. So we want to protect the people that are visiting your site. Number two, we want to make sure that criminals can't get in and harm our business through our website. And I'll kind of get into how that might happen. But depending on the way you utilize your site, depending on your business model, you very well may have access to back-end data, where if a criminal got access to the back end of your website, they could get information to use against you. You may save client information in your site. Your site may be directly connected to some back-end server-side things for your business. So, your website actually can create vulnerability from that regard, depending on how you got it set up and how it integrates into your business. So we want to make sure we're protecting that side of things from criminals getting in and, causing you harm. And third, and I won't say finally, but the last thing that I chose as a goal or as a primary objective here is to make sure that we talk about the fact that search engines pay attention to certain features with respect to security on your website. Just because, Google, Yelp, not Yelp, Yahoo, Google, Yahoo, Bing, all those big search engines, they want to make sure that they're showing websites to their users, right? The people that are going to google.com, they don't want to be sharing and sending people to infected sites or sites that don't take care of security precautions. Just because, that opens up them to being known for being the third party or the middleman that kind of, creates that connection. So Google and Yahoo and Bing and all those, bigger search engines, they definitely pay attention to the security features on your website, and they will punish you if you aren't maintaining kind of, best practices, if you will. So with all that said, I did do a review of kind of just the lay of the land, and I want to share with you, there are 4 of them, 4 big components or security features that your professional website is going to need in 2020. Just to get the best bang for your buck, to get the best marketing efforts behind it, and then also obviously to protect your business and your site visitors. So the first one, and this is one that we talk about a lot, you may have heard this term kind of thrown around, but I'm just going to tell you that number 1 is that you need what you and your website, your business website, need an SSL, and that stands for Security Socket Layer, right? But in the biz, it's just referred to as an SSL. So what that really, first I'll talk about kind of how you could tell if you have one or not, just from a visual standpoint. So if you go to your website or your online shopping, you may or may not have noticed that in your internet browser at the top left-hand corner, there's these little locks, and sometimes they are locked, as you see here on the right with the HTTPS, meaning secured, and sometimes they are unlocked, like this version on the left where it's, you can see it's unlocked. So when you're surfing around the web, one good way to tell if you're visiting a site that has an SSL, or to tell if your site has an SSL without calling your IT group or your web group, is just to take a look at that top left-hand corner. If the lock is locked, for all intent, for all cases and purposes, you probably have an SSL. You probably want to confirm, but if you're out searching and shopping on, Amazon.com, of course they have an SSL. But if you're out purchasing something from a vendor that you don't know, you're buying a gift for your niece and her birthday, and you did a Google search for the new latest toy that you're trying to get, make sure that you give a look to that top left-hand corner to make sure that that site is secured. And that's what people are doing when they hit your site. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that people check to make sure that they're visiting a website that is reputable, that is secure. So you want to make sure that you have an SSL. And then I'm going to touch on, what does an SSL do, Abby? Like, why do we even want this? What is it for? So the SSL, essentially, you need to think about your website as a communication point, right? It's a destination. So if your website is destination point A, and then your backend, your business softwares, things that are running off of your site, communication points are point B. So imagine you have somebody go to your website and they want to give you information because they either want to fill out a contact us form with you, or maybe they want to purchase something that you're selling. Maybe you've got a free form, a free download for a report or something you're trying to give away, right? So to give that piece of information or to sell them that good, you want them to give you information, right? That may be their credit card information. It could be their name. It could be as simple as their email address because you're trying to add them to a marketing list. But you're just trying to get information from the site visitor, right? So what an SSL does is it actually secures and protects the communication, the route, the communication channel. So imagine you've got a visitor on your site who puts information in, and then let's pretend that information is stored in a box, and then that box is carefully carried over to the person who needs to take it to do with it what they will, either to take the money, to give you the report, to do whatever that thing is, right? With an SSL, that box is impenetrable, right? We can't break into it. We can't get into it because the box is, or the communication is, protected. And what we do from a technology standpoint there is we encrypt the data, right? It's no longer, available for a criminal just to, glom on, sniff that data and steal it, right? So an SSL, for all intents and purposes, it just makes that vehicle that we're using to transmit that data, it encrypts it or makes it impenetrable. The other thing that I want to mention here is that you want to make sure that we're implementing an SSL so that you can protect your clients and their communications. But on the tail end, this is definitely one of those spaces that I was mentioning at the beginning of this session where Google specifically and Yahoo and Bing, they all kind of do the same things. They all have the same, for the most part, business model and agenda. But Google will punish you if you do not have an SSL because it's very easy for the bots to scrub your site and to tell if you have one or not because it's actually a certificate that's applied. So this is something that's very important. You want to make sure that if you have a website for your business, it has an SSL. You want to make sure that's up, that's current, that's recurring. It isn't a very hefty, expensive thing. It's a couple $100 per year or even a couple years. At Andromeda, we sell them, 1 year at a time. So this isn't something that's super expensive, but it is something that Google is going to pay attention to, your visitors are going to pay attention to, and you definitely want to pay attention to. So I'll get off my SSL soapbox. So number 2, or the second thing that I'm going to definitely make sure to hone in on, and this is something that we talk about pretty much every time we talk about cybersecurity, securing anything related to IT, your business, and that's just going to be strong passwords and password protocols. So you have passwords to get into your web environment, right? So whether you are the one that makes changes on your website or whether maybe you have a third-party company like Andromeda or maybe some other vendor who manages your website, there's a back end that you need to log into so that you can make changes, right? This shouldn't be just open to the world so that anybody can make changes. You need to have a username and a password. Well, you want to make sure that any usernames and any passwords, any people who have access to the back end of your website are maintaining strong passwords and password protocols. So to kind of review, what this looks like, number 1, we want to make sure our passwords are over 8 characters in length. That's a pretty standard thing for, password protocols and maintenance. A mixture of upper and lowercase letters. We're going to want to make sure we're using symbols and numbers, definitely. So exclamation points, ampersands, dollar signs, 1, 2, 3, 4 exclamation, all those different things. We're going to want to make sure that none of those numbers or words or letters associate with anything personal. So we don't want to put, our daughter's name, our first dog's name, the name of the street we live on, none of that information that somebody who knows you or somebody who has access to your social media or, just any public database could have access to. We don't want to use anything personal because somebody could figure that out, right? We also want to make sure it's always unique. So that means that every single account that you have online should really have its own strong and unique password. I know that can be difficult to do, but there are tools that can help you with this. And then really, if the best thing to do is if you could just, throw down a bunch of different characters and make this thing random. And then, the more random your password can be, the better it's going to be, because that means that no one can just happen to guess it, right? They've got to literally break into your account to get it or steal that information. One of the things that they recommend or the industry recommends to do if you are creating, let's say, a random password with all kinds of just different things is to create kind of a story or a phrase that's built upon the features that are in your password so that you can have that be the thing, the mnemonic device or the memory, the clue that will help you kind of drudge up what that password is if you weren't able to remember. And then I do want to touch quickly on, when I say creating a password management policy, what I mean there is really just from the business perspective, you want to make sure that you're setting up your employees for success. Because if you just tell them that they need to have strong passwords, your employees are going to do what they're asked. They're going to do what they can to make sure that they're protecting your business. But if you don't set up a process to make sure this is getting updated regularly and looked at, then you probably are just kind of leaving yourself open a little bit for some more vulnerability. So a good password management policy will have a few of these different things. It could probably have more features that I haven't included, but these are the ones that Andromeda, we believe are very important. And that's going to be, like we just talked about, we're going to set standards for the company. So we're not just going to suggest make a strong password. We're going to say it has to be 8 characters long. It has to use a mixture of these 2 things. It must do this X, Y, and Z. So that we're telling our employees exactly what they must do to create what we believe is a strong password. Then you probably want to create some type of mandated password system where we update that over a certain period of time. People that are really aggressive are going to say that you really want to update your passwords every 30 days, but that can get pretty daunting, and we don't want to create a situation where it's more work to stay secure than it is to get your work done. So we recommend changing passwords at 90 days at a minimum. That's a pretty good cycle. That means that you're going to change most passwords about 4 times a year. And then obviously don't repeat the ones that you used before. Then we also recommend setting up lockout procedures for invalid attempts. So that means you've probably gotten annoyed by a lockout procedure in the past. All that means is that if you've tried, let's say 5 times, if the business decides the number is 5, if you've tried to log into your account 5 times and you fat fingered it, or you can't remember and you just can't get that password right, the system is going to say, nope, something is weird here. We're going to lock you out. And then another step has to be taken so that you can get in there, whether that's you have to ask admin credentials, you've got to wait a certain amount of time, any number of things. Maybe you've got to do dual authentication and give them another piece of information to really prove it's you. But you can set that out on your end. You could tell a program or a company that works with you, your vendor, you can say, I want my lockout attempt to take effect after 3 times or 4 times or 5 times. And then I kind of already mentioned it, but when it comes to password maintenance, it's really hard to do this on your own. So one of the things that the first thing I would recommend beyond everything else is to look into a password management tool so that you can have a tool do all of this for you. At Andromeda, we love a tool called LastPass. We don't resell it. It's just a tool that we use for our own business. I've got an account that I use personally and professionally. And it just really, it's going to help your employees be more secure. It's going to help you feel better. I know that there have been instances even in the last, let's say 6 months, that I've gotten alerted of a major breach or a data breach where I know that my information was stolen. Let's say a password was stolen, and it hasn't even cost me, even a second's concern, because I know that the password they stole, number one, I'm going to update it right away, and then it doesn't match anything else. So that criminal has a useless piece of data that they can do whatever they want with. And that's the beauty of a password management tool. So number 3, this one is something that a lot of people they don't realize about websites. And that is that your website it needs regular updates and maintenance, just like any other item that's a part of your technology stack, right? So our workstations, our PCs, our servers, those all get regular updates, right? Your website needs that too. So there are a few different things that you want to make sure you're keeping up to date. And here are just a couple of the ones that I think from a web perspective that you want to talk to your team about. So number 1, you want to make sure that your CMS, that's your content management system or your content management platform. The most popular one of those in the world right now is WordPress. And essentially that's just what the platform that your website's built on. That's what I would call that. So some of the other ones you may be familiar with, like a Wix or a Squarespace or WordPress or Joomla is one of these. But WordPress is definitely kind of the biggest contender. We build 95% or more of the websites that we build for our clients on WordPress. But these platforms and these environments, just like anything else, they need updates. And WordPress is not going to, for most cases, they're not going to push that directly out. You need to be the one that goes in and does those updates. And that's for a very specific and important reason. And that's that, WordPress doesn't know all the plugins and things that you've got on your site, right? And sometimes these updates can cause some, we'll call it infighting, right? Sometimes an update, as we know, to let's say, for instance, our PC, it makes a program act a little weird until it gets in sync. The same thing can happen on your website. So most of the time, your web team is going to do this on a schedule. We perform our website updates to our WordPress platform on a quarterly basis. And we do that knowing that we need to pay attention and do some QA, do some quality assurance to make sure that when we do those updates, nothing happens. But the important part there is just that, just like with a computer, just like with a PC, there are criminals out there creating malware, creating programs, all kinds of stuff that's meant to attack and get into your WordPress platform. And these updates are meant to help patch up those security loopholes. They help make sure that your WordPress platform functions properly, that it's loading as fast as it can so that you get the best SEO results, that your visitors are having the best experience they can, and then also that it's as secure as possible. I already kind of hinted at this, but another thing you want to make sure is getting regular updates and maintenance are going to be the plugins and the patches that you've applied to your site. Our websites have widgets. They've got applications running on them. They've got different things. There's a plugin called Yoast that helps with your SEO. There's plugins that help images the file sizes be smaller so the sites load faster. There's all kinds of stuff that your web team probably has embedded onto your site, and you want to make sure that those plugins are also getting those updates, right? Because again, hackers and criminals, they've got tools that they run. They literally just sit there and they wait for these known vulnerabilities to pop up, and then they run scans to find websites that have dated plugins that haven't been updated. They know what the vulnerabilities are. They get into your site and they embed it with malware, and that's what is done every single day. And it's all because we're not maintaining proper environment updates, I'll call them. So then the only other thing, and it's not the only other thing, but the last thing I will mention is that you do want to make sure that you're communicating with your web hosts to find out how regularly, or how they handle updates to the server side of things. So we talked about the website itself and making sure that is getting updated. We talked about the plugins and the widgets and the applications that we have on our site that are running there, that we want to make sure those are getting updated. And then we want to make sure that we take a step back and we go, okay, so what about the environment that these things are living in? How is that being maintained? How is that being updated? Is the coding language being maintained? Has that been updated? All those kinds of things. And you probably, many of our contacts are going to be, office managers, owners, and people who may not necessarily get into things to that level, that granular level. But you do want to ask those questions of maybe your marketing manager or whoever is making those decisions for your website. Just make sure that you're working with somebody that you can trust, who understands that the website needs to be beautiful. It's got to bring you those leads, but it's also got to be secured, right? There are technology elements that we've got to make sure that we're securing. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about here is going to be a firewall for your website. So a firewall is something that, most people understand how that works, right? And we understand how it works from the perspective of our business and the internet, right? A firewall essentially is really just, it's a barrier, and it's invisible. It's not going to be something that we really see, but it's a piece of equipment that helps make sure that when we're on our network, when we're getting on the internet, our employees are able to get to the places that they want to get that are protected, right? The firewall is going to make sure that it's keeping people away from sites that we know are bad, that are infected. You could even, set your firewall up to make sure that we're scraping content so that we're not going to visit sites that have content we shouldn't be visiting and things of that nature. And then for, the network, a firewall also makes sure then the converse, people can't get in that don't belong in your network internally, right? So a firewall is really just a barrier that's going to be here to make sure that the people that need to get in can, and the people that shouldn't get to places that they shouldn't go don't get there either, right? That's how it works for your website too, for the most part, right? So a firewall for your website, or in the industry, it's typically called a WAF, a WAF, or a web application firewall. A web application is considered your website. A WAF, or a website firewall, as I'll call it on this session, a web firewall is really just going to make sure that these hackers and these criminals that are trying to get onto your site, and again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to hide files, hide code on your site, so that when, myself, let's say I'm not Abby, the marketing manager at Andromeda, I'm just Abby on the internet looking up cute pictures of puppies, right? What the criminals are going to try and do is they're going to try and get onto that puppy website, and they're going to try and put code into the back end so that, when I visit it, they can infect my machine in whatever way they want, right? They may try to embed spyware on my machine so they can watch what I'm doing. They may try to have me download a bad file so that they can do, infect my machine with ransomware. Who knows what they're trying to do? But this is one of the ways that these criminals are getting into businesses and to our devices. It's through websites and infecting them. I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but I know that it's some egregious number of per capita, the number of sites daily that are infected. And you have to understand there are millions and millions and millions of websites globally, but I think it's over 80% of all websites deal with some type of a malware incident annually. So you want to make sure that you're investing in a firewall for your website that's going to assist with that. Good firewalls are also, they're not just going to be a barrier. We use a program called Security. And I mean, no firewall, it's got to be said also, no firewall is going to be 100% foolproof. There's always going to be some instance somewhere that gets past it, because it's an ongoing game. It's an ongoing battle. Criminals are always getting smarter. Security professionals are always trying to stay a step ahead of them. It's a cat and mouse type of a battle. But one of the nice things with a professional website application firewall is that if, let's say, they identify something on your site, right, they're using heuristics, they're using behavior models, They're constantly scrubbing the internet to try and find new programs and malware. If they identify your site as infected, then a good website application or a web application firewall is then going to be backed up by the service that's going to help you scrub and clean and get rid of that infection. And our tool does do that as well. So one of the things that I did want to touch on real quick, because a lot of times we get questions about this, is going to be the difference between an SSL and a web firewall. So, because earlier in the session, I made mention of the fact that an SSL, it encrypts communication on your site. It makes sure that if somebody puts information in, that information can't be stolen. It acts, like we talked about, it makes that box, that vehicle that we're transmitting data impenetrable, right? So a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, oh, but that is a firewall. Like, why do I need an SSL and a firewall, right? Like, I don't need both of those things, right? Why are you trying to sell me these things I don't need, snake oil salesman? And we are not, right? We are not snake oil salesmen. So I want to make sure that you understand the reason that both an SSL and a web application firewall or a web firewall are needed. So quick review is that an SSL protects data as it travels from a visitor to you or the visitor to the bank or, wherever it's going, right? If we're taking that credit card information to the person that's going to run the credit card, it's protecting that traveling. So an example, like I say here, is an SSL will protect and encrypt the data a customer puts into a contact us form. An SSL will also protect personal and financial information a client gives you on your website. So if I went to that puppy website and I saw a pillow with a beautiful dog on it that I just had to have, and I gave them my credit card information, I gave them my address, I gave them all the different data points that they wanted, when they have an SSL, I know that that information is being encrypted as it is being sent to the person who's supposed to receive it, and that it's not being stolen and intercepted by a criminal in, Slovakia. So then the second, we're just going to touch again, a web firewall. So wait a minute, why do I need a web firewall if I've already got that SSL? A web firewall, sometimes referred to, like I said, as a WAF or a web application firewall, helps to secure and protect the site itself. So an example of that is a firewall or a web firewall will help prevent a hacker from embedding a virus into your site that infects others, right? So the web application firewall is supposed to help make sure that the criminals can't get in to access and mess with those plugins, can't get in to access and mess with those widgets, can't get in and embed code, or it can't get in and put a bad picture on your site that everyone's then going to see, or any of those types of crazy things. And then, I hate to throw it up there, but, whenever we talk about firewalls, you've got to mention, I've got that little asterisk, my little note is that no web firewall or firewall is bulletproof. So make sure that you invest in a solution that is going to make sure that, they're going to be there to support you in the event of something happening, because there is no 100% impenetrable solution. And if somebody tells you that theirs is, I hate to say it, but it's kind of maybe not so true. In review, website security features that we must have as per Andromeda and our web team, what we believe, that's going to be number one, that SSL. Number two, we're going to want to make sure that we've got great, strong passwords and password maintenance set up for our account. Number three, we want to make sure we're having a conversation with our management of our website, whoever's doing that, to make sure that we're maintaining regular updates for CMS. That's our content management system, like WordPress. So we're maintaining regular updates for the CMS, any plugins on our site, any widgets that we're using, and the web environment as a whole. And what I mean there is your server environment, your host environment, if you will. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're implementing that WAF, or that website application firewall. And if you do all four of those things, I'm not going to say that your site is bulletproof or, impenetrable, but you, I would say, are doing your due diligence. You're following best practices to make sure that you are creating a website that is secure for yourself, secure for your business, and secure for your visitors. So with that, I know that was a lot of data, but I will open things up for some questions and answers. Okay, are there different types of SSLs? Yeah, I'm assuming you've probably heard something about some of those things, like I said earlier in the call. There are standard SSLs. There are what is called wildcard SSLs. There's new SSLs that are meant to be used by probably like more financial institutions and institutions under extreme compliance that actually take a secondary step to confirm not just that the certificate is true and that the data is encrypted, but they go so far as to make sure that the business itself is who they say they are. Because right now, one of the things that's happening in the market is criminals are actually creating spoof websites and they're able to trick people by buying SSL certificates. So for instance, let's say somebody was trying to spoof a JP Morgan and Chase, right? They made a chase.com website and they were trying to send out spam to steal people's credentials there. Chase actually would go and get an SSL that doesn't just encrypt their data, but has to be associated with Chase to make sure that that's accurate. But for most cases and purposes, you don't need to do anything that intense. That's really going to be for heavily regulated industries. A standard SSL, like I said, we sell them on a year-to-year basis just to make sure that they're updated and maintained as security policy and procedures change. But you may hear of like I said, wildcard SSLs, standard SSLs that last 1 year, and then some of them are 2-year or 3-year, but for the most part, they all kind of function the same. Oh, I got a question. See, this one's on the chat. So if we are using a very reputable web host for our site, can we assume that they have firewalls in place to protect our sites? I would say no, because those are kind of two different things. So the host environment is probably protected, but that doesn't mean that your website has a firewall associated with it specifically. So it's a good thing to just check into. The firewalls really, I'm trying to think. We actually bundle our hosting and our firewall solution together into an annual price, and it's really reasonable. It's like I think it's about $600 or $700 annually, so that's spread out over 12 months for the firewall and the hosting annually. But I would definitely follow up with your hosting provider on that, just because they may have firewalls, like I said, for themselves, but that does not mean that they have a firewall for your site specifically. And there's all kinds of different things that you could get into depending on how granular you want to go there, because you could ask questions about, am I sharing my space? Is my environment secured? Is it private? Any number of things. Another good question would be just kind of what environment your site is hosted on, just because different types of environments are more vulnerable to issues. So most sites these days are hosted on a Linux environment, but some sites are hosted on Windows. I would say if your site is hosted on a Windows environment, you absolutely want to make sure you have a firewall installed, just because criminals are able to kind of code a little bit more, I don't want to say efficiently or effectively, but there's just more stuff out there typically that can kind of go after you in that regard. And I should throw out there that I do oversee all of our web team. So if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns outside of this session about anything related to your website, I'm definitely a great person to throw that at. And even if I don't know, if it's too techy for me, I will get with the people who know those answers for you. All right. Well, it looks like that is about it for questions for today. I do appreciate everyone for hopping on. I will do a quick shout out to next month's session. I thought that given the current climate and everything that's going on, it might be a really great idea to cover just some employee cybersecurity tips and training. And I'm even thinking about showing you guys kind of what we do at Andromeda and the tool that we use for ourselves. With all of us working remote and potentially working remote even longer than now. Obviously no one knows. I figured that would be a really timely thing to share. So I'll be putting that out and hope to see everybody there. That's going to be the third week or the third Wednesday in May. I can grab the date on that. That is May 20th on Wednesday. So I hope to see you guys there. And without further ado, I'm going to hop off and get this recording ready to share with everybody. So thank you everyone again for stopping by, and I will see you next month. Hey, it's me again, real quick, just bouncing in after that recorded session just to do one last reminder to make sure that you get registered right away for next month's session. We're going to be hosting that on Wednesday, May 20th, and our topic is going to be employee cybersecurity trainings, programs, plans, solution. Where should you start? How do you implement? And what do you want to make sure that you've got to make sure that you've got a top-notch professional employee cybersecurity training plan? Feel free to register by clicking below, and I will see you next month.